But first, we have breaking news as we come on the air tonight. The Pentagon says the Navy Secretary is leaving his post effective immediately. The shakeup comes at another moment of uncertainty, 7.5 weeks into the war with Iran. The Iranian regime struck multiple commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz today, despite the ongoing ceasefire with the U.S. Iran is calling for the U.S. to end its naval blockade of Iranian ports. That blockade started 9 days ago and is designed to put economic pressure on the regime. It's unclear what this means for the possibility of diplomacy. President Trump extended that ceasefire yesterday to give Iran time to come up with a unified proposal. He also told the New York Post today the peace talks could resume this week. Earlier, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president is in the driver's seat.
The president has not set a deadline himself. Ultimately, he will dictate the timetable. And again, he is satisfied with the naval blockade, and he understands that Iran is in a very weak position, and the cards are in President Trump's hands right now.
The Pentagon today said 400 U.S. service members have been hurt in the war since it began on February 28. 13 have been killed. Throughout all this, President Trump has insisted Iran's military capabilities have been severely diminished, obliterated. He has said the Iranian Navy and Air Force are completely wiped out, but multiple U.S. officials tell CBS News that's not exactly the case. In fact, we're told about half of Iran's ballistic missile stockpile and the associated launch systems are still intact. CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson joins us now. Before we go to Iran's military capabilities, what do we know about the Navy Secretary being out?
Very little so far, Lindsay. All we have is this statement from Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell saying that the ouster is effective immediately. Phelan was actually last seen just yesterday attending a major annual conference where he gave a speech about the future of the Navy. Phelan previously served in private investment, which had been touted as a skill that the military needed to sift through some of the bureaucracy and get to a shipbuilding plan that is more robust. He will now be replaced, according to Mr. Parnell, by his undersecretary, Hung Kao, who did serve in the Navy, was an explosive ordnance disposal service member in the Navy, but this change does come as the Navy is playing a significant part in the ongoing war with Iran.
Okay, so what more are we learning about Iran's military capabilities?
At the start of the ceasefire, Iran, according to our sources, had still retained about half of its ballistic missile stockpile and the associated launcher systems. On top of that, about 2/3 of Iran's Air Force is believed to be still intact. And while the conventional Navy has largely been destroyed, about 60% of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy is still functional. It's that Navy that's posing a threat to the Strait of Hormuz with its fast attack speedboats. And the IRGC is the one today that claimed to attack 2 commercial ships there just this morning. That's not to say the military campaign, the U.S. military campaign, has not made significant progress. It certainly has, but there are gaps between the capabilities Iran retains and what the Trump administration is saying publicly. Both President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have described the campaign as a overwhelming success, with Secretary Hegseth even calling it a capital V victory. But clearly, Iran still has some capabilities, and that may be why Iranian leaders are not succumbing yet to a surrender on President Trump's terms.
Eleanor Watson, thank you. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us. So where do things stand on possible peace talks in the state of the ceasefire?
Lindsay, as the president said last night, the White House is still waiting for some kind of unified response from Iranian leadership. The White House press secretary telling reporters this afternoon that they are now familiar with dynamics that essentially has one set of goals and messaging coming from the people they're speaking with directly, but pressure from other elements of the Iranian leadership. And of course, they're asked, well, who exactly are you speaking with and how are you aware of this? And they say intelligence agencies in the White House are monitoring things such that they have a better read on this. So there's no timetable, no deadline put on the Iranians yet to give an answer. But the White House remains convinced that the blockade they've put on the Strait of Hormuz and the economic pressure they continue to place on Iran through sanctions is going to squeeze that country such that they'll eventually come around. Take a listen to some of what the press secretary had to say.
They can't move oil in and out. They can't even pay their own people as a result of this economic leverage that President Trump has inflicted over them. So he's satisfied with that as we await their response. And we will see. The president has not set a firm deadline to receive an Iranian proposal.
We did not see the president today. White House said he had a series of policy meetings. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was spotted at one point outside the White House here on his way back in. So no other sense of what exactly the president was doing today regarding the war.
What are you hearing about the Navy Secretary Phelan's departure?
Well, as Ellie said, official details not entirely clear, but we do know that the secretary and his deputy secretary have had some personality and ideological vision issues with all sorts of different military leadership, be they in uniform or, in this case, the civilian ranks. John Phelan was, as Ellie cited, put in this position in part because of his business background. What will be alarming to some on Capitol Hill is the idea now that the Deputy Navy Secretary, Hung Gao, is going to step up and run this division at a time of war. Gao was a pretty controversial, some say extremist Republican U.S. Senate candidate in Virginia back in 2024 and lost to the incumbent Senator Tim Kaine, but then was rewarded because of his loyalty to the president, at least politically, with this position, in part because of his Navy service. So we'll see what the reaction is across the military, but also among lawmakers who've already been concerned about Pentagon leadership and how forthcoming they've been about details of the war.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much.